Okay, Bishop Jaxi gets in here, and it's part of the. He was responding to me. Bishop Jaxi had responded to Redeemed Zoomer. Now, Redeemed Zoomer, Reformed Zoomer, all these guys, sorry. Basically, you use the term Zoomer, and I'm just automatically go, you don't know what you're talking about, because they make such inane statements. So, Redeemed Zoomer had responded to Nathaniel Jolly, who had quoted something from Johnny Mac. And this is what Redeemed Zoomer said. He said, this proves that MacArthur is a heretic. Now, I don't even remember what it was about. And I don't care. Since Johnny Mac's gone, well, even before Johnny Mac died, there were just all sorts of people who wouldn't understand the term long-term ministry and faithfulness because they haven't lived long enough to have long-term ministry or faithfulness. And they just love to make a name for themselves by shooting at people like Johnny Mac. He was a dispensationalist. Dispensationalism is this, that, and everything. Okay, look. I'm not a dispensationalist. I was raised a dispensationalist. I reject dispensational hermeneutics. I reject the elevation of certain eschatological perspectives to the point of dogma, all that kind of stuff. But some of the most evangelistic, solid, unmovable dudes I know are dispensationalists. And we disagree. And sometimes I wonder, how did you get there, bro? And, for me, I would say, hey, if you're especially if you recognize Reformed theology, just apply the same hermeneutics. You're not going to come to those conclusions. But the point is, these guys are just looking for clicks. And now that Johnny Mac's gone, there's a good name to take some shots at and get a little more interest in your post, shall we say, which I find disgusting. So anyways, Redeemed Zoomer said, this proves that MacArthur is a heretic. So is Nathaniel, and anyone who agrees with this statement. They literally denounce, Theotokos, not just the language, mark and avoid them all. Well, okay, I had forgotten that was in there. Now, I would normally pronounce it Theotokos, but given the ecclesiastical usage in Rome and Eastern Orthodoxy, I've just decided it's easier to go with the modern use, and I'll deal with the pronunciation issues later. Theotokos is the modern pronunciation. Means God bearer. And as I've explained many times before, there is a perfectly orthodox context for the use of that term. Because initially, it was a Christological title. It said something about Jesus. It wasn't about Mary. It wasn't about her status. It wasn't about exaltation, power, intercession, none of that stuff. What it was saying was that Jesus was not adopted. He wasn't just a human being who was adopted and the Son of God descended upon him. From the moment of his conception, he was the God-man. And so when he was born by Mary, and I would insist that he was actually born by Mary, didn't just beam out of Mary like you have in perpetual virginity. When he's born of Mary, he is truly the God-man at the time of birth, and therefore she is the bearer of God. She doesn't give birth to God. That wasn't what it was about by any stretch of the imagination. So Theotokos, as a Christological title, as an affirmation of the fact of the hypostatic union, is perfectly orthodox. And you can use that term. But since it became, since it entered into general usage, especially after the Council of Chalcedon, but before then too, it has changed. It has become a title of Mary. The vast majority of Roman Catholics that talk about the Mother of God aren't thinking about the hypostatic union at all. It does not even enter their mind. So that use is completely inappropriate. It's ahistorical. It's a perversion of the historical reality. And so we have to be able to make those distinctions. So I don't know what it was that that Nathaniel Jolly or John MacArthur said at that particular point in time. But Bishop Jaxi quoted that thing from Redeemed Zoomer and said, "Such love, such little chaos, much wow." So he's on this big, the whole Protestant world is in chaos thing. And I responded to him in the last program, pointed out his categorical errors, pointed out the hypocrisy, pointed out what's really going on in Rome. He doesn't care about any of that. He's one of those guys that will sit there, all this stuff documentable about what's going on in his own church, and it's like, la, 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 la. And then you go, and you're misrepresenting us. You're making Gnostics. Well, they're all Protestants. It's just childish foolishness. It really is. But if it gives the opportunity to, again, demonstrate how shallow this kind of Roman Catholic apologetics is, maybe it might help somebody. Somebody else may pick it up. So I responded to him, and I said, Protestants are constantly misrepresenting the Pope and not quoting actually infallible statements and teachings, exclamation point. And Zoomers on X actually represent all of Protestantism. So I was just simply pointing out what this guy does is he'll have one standard for his church. If you're going to criticize the Pope, then you need to criticize the Pope giving infallible teachings, official teachings. You've got to quote things in context, stuff like that. Obvious stuff, which, hey, some non-Catholics will misrepresent the Pope. Sure. There are I've seen many Catholics misrepresent the prophet of Mormonism. Okay. Yeah, that's sort of the nature of X. Happens. But to make someone like Redeemed Zoomer represent all of Protestantism is just childish and foolish. And Bishop Jaxi has been corrected so many times now that he's just proving that he's childish and foolish. That's just his nature, and he evidently can't break out of it. Maybe he'll grow up and mature at some point. Don't know. Right now, it just means he's not really an honest interlocutor. You shouldn't be wasting too much time. But again, it's the categories here that help. That's why I'm dealing with this. He says, so he responds to me and says, in Protestantism, everyone represents Protestantism because there is no binding normative authority above the individual. That is just, it's hard for me to express the stupidity of this man's thinking. I mean, so that means, okay, I could just simply say, in Roman Catholicism, everyone represents Catholicism because the supposedly binding normative authority above the individual constantly contradicts itself and never makes corrections. Right? Where is the Pope in correcting the Catholics on X who are still saying that it's appropriate to use the terminology of co-redemptrix and co-mediatrix? They're quoting popes. They're quoting popes. Mark Miravalle made a strong argument for years based upon the statements of the popes, the teachings of the popes. For what? 150 years? A century and a half of consistent papal theology. That's what's on their side. So where's the Pope? Is he on? Could you show me where he's on X correcting these people? Because Bishop Jaxi, you're living in a fantasy world. You're living in a fantasy world. You truly are. You can ignore fiducia supplicans all you want. It created massive confusion, and you can't give me its official interpretation. You're not authorized to do so. And the people who wrote it, because they're liberation theologians, can't give you clear answers on anything. Now, you can ignore that. You can pretend it doesn't exist. Just, that's what you're doing. You know, my mom used to tell me years and years ago, and I remember the incident. At about age 3, I decided I was going to go visit my friend down the road without asking permission. And I decided the fastest way to get there was this big, wide, black thing called County Road 15. And my mom sees me heading down the driveway, and she comes after me, telling you get back here right now. You know what I did? I stuck my fingers in my ears, and I started running. And so she's chasing me down County Road 15, and it was on a curve. I remember what the curve looked like. Somebody could have come around that thing, and I would have been history. But my excuse, what did I think? I can't hear you. I've got my fingers in my ears. Boy, did I get my bottom tanned. I never tried that again. And I see so many kids in Walmart or Target that they need to get their bottom tanned too. And they'd stop behaving that way. But that's Bishop Jaxi. He's acting like a theological 3-year-old. He's got his fingers in his ears, and I don't care that my criticisms of you actually disprove my position. I'm just going to keep doing this because it's how I get interaction. It's how I get attention. It's how I demonstrate that I'm very immature. That's what it is. The Protestant system is a theological free-for-all. There is no Protestant system. There is none. Identify it. What is it? What's its confession of faith? What's its creed? You don't know, because there isn't one. You're making things up. You're dishonest. You're a very dishonest individual. A cacophony of competing Bible interpretations and mutually contradicting voices, all claiming the Holy Spirit. Well, there may be those things. There were in the early church too. That didn't mean that there was not one clear divine teaching. And you hold to a system that covers that teaching in the traditions of men, and you cannot examine it because you lack the foundation. But that's not what the quote unquote Protestant system is, anyways. All he's saying is, we have an authoritarian system. You don't really practice it. The popes are changing things by their practice, and they're not enforcing things. And yeah, the Catholic Church today is very, very different than it was 200 years ago. But I'm just going to ignore all that. And I'm just going to focus on stuff that isn't even related. I'm going to throw the Gnostics out there and the Mormons out there, and you're all just a bunch of Protestants, and it's just pure foolishness. So Dr. White can insist the Zoomers don't represent Protestantism, but by Protestant principles, why wouldn't they? What Protestant principles? You can't give me any. You can't give me any. You're making this up. This is pure fiction. You're a fiction writer. They have the same Bible, he does, and the same appeal to the Spirit. His disagreement is just another voice in the Protestant noise. No, it's not. If that were true, why don't I lose every debate against Roman Catholics? Why don't you listen, Bishop Jaxi? Why don't you go find the cross-examination I did of Father Peter Stravinskas, 2 PhDs, editor of the Catholic Answer, on 1 Corinthians chapter 3. How about we do it this way, Bishop Jaxi? How about you come on the dividing line? And we'll do 1 Corinthians chapter 3. And we'll see if I'm just simply, if we have the same Bible and the same appeal to the Spirit, and his disagreement is just another voice in the Protestant noise. Bishop Jaxi, you could not sit there and survive that cross-examination. Tim Staples couldn't. Peter Stravinskas couldn't. You know that. So what's the difference? Some of us actually take Scripture seriously. And you know what's funny? You're stuck with the Jerome Bible commentary. Do you own it? I do. I didn't bring it on this trip. It's sort of heavy. I'd like to get it in electronic form, actually. But you're stuck with the Jerome Bible commentary. Imprimatur, nihil obstat, forward by Pope Francis. You will find the kind of exegesis in there to not only not represent the best historical Roman Catholic exegetical traditions on certain topics, but actually there's a number of places they don't even look at 1 Corinthians chapter 3 as having anything to do with purgatory. They don't even do it. Are they Protestant? Are they just a noise? See, you are so inconsistent, and you don't care. And if you don't care about consistency, you're not a truthful person. You're not honest. You're dishonest. You're a liar. If you don't care about consistency, you're going to lie. That's all there is. All there is to it. So there's good old Bishop Jaxi demonstrating things like that. Okay, last one here.